Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we really get into the sources you send us, digging deep to pull out the most valuable insights, especially for you.
That's right.
And for this deep dive, you've shared, quite a rich set of materials, articles, research, all focused on teaching effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at common mistakes, powerful teaching methods, and importantly, how to connect those methods to actual student growth.
Yeah, making that link is key.
Our mission today, and we're doing this for the PIQC Institute of Quality, as part of their big push to promote quality education in Pakistan, is to unpack all this stuff. We want to pull out the real gems, the nuggets that can help your teaching practice.
Absolutely. Think of it as, practical takeaways from the research.
So the plan is, first, we'll look at some common pitfalls, mistakes even really experienced teachers might make.
And it's not about pointing fingers at all. It's about awareness, right? That's a first step to getting better.
Exactly. Then we'll shift gears and explore some effective teaching methods, the kind you see in, top quality schools and universities globally.
Lots of interesting stuff there.
We'll also look at how to match those methods to learning goals, using frameworks like the Bloom's taxonomy to think about different levels of learning.
Making sure the method fits the goal. Super important.
And finally, we'll wrap it all up with some insights and maybe a bit of motivation for keeping that growth going in your own teaching. Sound good?
Sounds great. It's a really crucial topic. Teaching is tough, and it's completely normal to hit bumps or realize something isn't quite working as planned. This is about finding ways to navigate that.
Okay, let's dive in then. Unpacking these common mistakes first. Based on the sources you sent, what are some of the really fundamental errors teachers might fall into?
Well, one really big one that came up, especially in subjects like math, is this tendency to prioritize the procedure over the actual concept.
Okay, so focusing really hard on how the steps to solve something, maybe without spending enough time on the why it works.
Precisely. Students get good at following a recipe, let's say for a specific type of math problem, but they don't really get the underlying mathematical ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And the sources really stress this. Knowing the steps is useful, of course, but if that's all they know, they often, they hit a wall when the problem looks a bit different or needs to be applied in a new way. They lack that flexibility.
Right, they can't transfer the knowledge.
Yeah.
And that limits their future learning, doesn't it?
Totally. It creates a shaky foundation. One source put it nicely, focusing on that deeper conceptual understanding first might feel slower. It takes more time up front in class.
Yeah, it definitely can feel that way.
But it builds a much stronger mental framework for students. It actually helps them tackle harder stuff later on. It's like investing in their long-term ability to learn.
I like that analogy. Building deep roots, not just surface skills. Okay, what's another common pitfall that the materials highlighted?
Another one is overloading students with too many different strategies all at the same time.
Oh, interesting. Even if the intention is good, like trying to cater to different styles.
Exactly. You might think, I'll show them 5 ways to do this. But the sources suggest this can actually just confuse students. Cognitive overload.
So they get stuck trying to figure out which way to use.
Yeah, or they might just grab onto the easiest or maybe the least efficient one because they haven't really mastered any of them properly. One source pointed out it can kind of lead students to think there's always a shortcut or a trick instead of encouraging them to really think deeply and work through the problem.
So maybe introduce strategies one by one. Let them get good at one before adding another tool.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. Focus on depth with a few key strategies before you broaden things out. Another really critical mistake is not truly understanding student needs and then planning lessons accordingly.
Okay, tell me more about that.
One source used a great analogy: planning a lesson without knowing your students and their goals is like planning a road trip, but you don't know who's coming or where they want to go.
Huh. Right, you'd end up lost or with unhappy passengers.
Exactly. So it really hammers home how vital it is to start with clear learning goals. What should students actually know or be able to do after this lesson? You need that first.
Before you even think about the activities.
Absolutely. And it also means structuring lessons logically, step by step, and using a mix of methods. Because, let's face it, any group of students is going to have different backgrounds, different needs, different ways of learning.
And you mentioned understanding students. The sources talked about specific assumptions teachers sometimes make, right?
Yeah.
Especially about certain groups.
Yes, this was a really significant point. Making assumptions can be quite harmful. For instance, assuming parents of English language learners, ELLs, aren't interested or able to help with schoolwork.
That seems like a potentially damaging assumption.
It really is. The strong advice from the sources is make the effort. Build relationships with all parents, even if you need a translator. Making that connection, showing you value their input, it pays off hugely for the student.
That extra effort in communication makes a big difference then.
A massive difference. And related to ELLs, another bad assumption is thinking that just because they're still learning English, they aren't ready for challenging academic work.
Lowering expectations based on language level?
Exactly. But the sources point to schools where ELLs do meet high standards. The key is the teacher acting as what they called a warm demander.
A warm demander. What does that look like?
It means you have high expectations, you push them academically, but you do it with kindness, support, and a strong relationship. For ELLs, it means breaking down complex stuff, showing how it's relevant to them, and constantly helping them use the right academic language.
So you don't lower the bar, you provide the right ladder to reach it.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's about the scaffolding, not reducing the rigor.
Got it. What about assumptions with other student groups, like adult learners?
Yeah, the sources mention that too. In college or university, it's easy to assume adult students walk in with certain background knowledge or skills.
But they might not have it.
They might not. The advice is simple. Don't assume. Use some kind of needs assessment early on, a quick survey, maybe brief chats. Find out what they already know, what their goals are for the course, how they plan to use the material. That helps you tailor things much better.
Makes sense. Know your audience. Is it also a mistake to assume students just know the classroom rules or course expectations?
Oh, absolutely. Assuming they understand the goals, how assignments work, or even simple things like your cell phone policy that leads to trouble.
So clarity is king.
Totally. Spell everything out clearly in the syllabus or on the course website. And the sources suggest treating that syllabus like a living document. Look at it each term. Tweak it based on past experiences. Clear expectations up front save a lot of headaches later.
Okay, so planning, understanding students, avoiding assumptions, clear expectations. What of the actual teaching part, the delivery? Common mistakes there.
A huge one is relying too much on just lecturing without getting students actively involved.
The classic sage on the stage.
Right. And let's be honest, attention spans aren't getting longer. Sitting through a long, unbroken lecture is tough for almost anyone these days. One source even mentioned that for online videos, maybe keeping lecture segments around 10 minutes is ideal.
Wow, 10 minutes. That's short.
It really underscores the need for interaction. And just talking isn't always enough, especially for, say, ELLs. You need visuals, real objects, pictures, gestures, facial expressions, maybe slow down a bit, use clear sentences, favor concrete nouns.
Making the language accessible.
Exactly. And for distance learning, it's really about shifting from just presenting info to intentionally building in ways for students to interact with the material and each other.
How do you do that effectively online where it can feel a bit distant?
The sources suggest several things. For live sessions, call on students, use polls, quick quizzes, breakout rooms for group work.
Okay, keeping them active in real time.
Yeah. And for asynchronous stuff, where they work on their own time. Use low-stakes quizzes, maybe discussion forums or email comments, short video responses, automatic feedback tools, track engagement analytics, and be clear about when you're available to help. The main idea is getting them to do something with the information, not just passively receive it.
Right, active processing. Makes sense. What about classroom management? Any common errors there?
Yeah, a big one is focusing too much on just control instead of earning respect.
Explain that difference.
Well, especially for new teachers, there's this anxiety about things getting noisy or students being off task, this feeling of losing control. But focusing only on strict top-down control often doesn't work long-term.
So demanding silence versus creating an environment where students want to engage.
Exactly. The better approach, according to the sources, is building relationships where you earn their respect and appreciation by being firm, but also fair and consistent.
And if behavior issues persist,
then you need to dig deeper. Use something like a functional behavior assessment to figure out the why. Is the student trying to get attention? Are they avoiding work they find too hard? Addressing the root cause is way more effective than just punishing the behavior you see on the surface.
get to the root. Don't just preen the leaves.
Nicely put. And simple things help build that positive climate too. Aim for way more positive interactions than negative ones, like a 3-to-1 ratio. Use proximity, just moving closer to a student, eye contact, nodding to encourage participation. It's about fostering a culture of respect and safety where learning can happen.
That culture piece sounds really foundational. You also mentioned earlier that Not adapting to different learning styles is a mistake.
Right, the one-size-fits-all trap. We know students learn differently. If you only teach one way, some students inevitably get left behind or just tune out.
So only lecturing, or only giving written tests, for instance.
Exactly. The fix is to consciously mix it up. Use visuals, group activities, discussions, tech tools for personalized paths. Let students show what they know in different ways, presentations, projects, reports, and actually listen to student feedback about what's working for them.
Variety keeps it fresh and reaches more learners. Okay, what about when students get stuck on something hard? Is there a mistake related to that struggle?
Yes, a really common one. Not allowing for productive struggle. Or, as some call it, spoon-feeding the answers.
It feels so helpful to just give them the answer when they're struggling.
It does, and sometimes a small hint is needed to prevent total frustration, but the sources make a key distinction between spoon-feeding and scaffolding.
Okay, what's the difference?
Spoon-feeding is just giving the answer, which stops their thinking. Scaffolding is giving brief, process-focused hints, maybe under 30 seconds, calm tone, like, what was the first step we took on similar problems? Not, the answer is 5. It guides their thinking process.
Helping them figure out how to think about it?
Exactly. The gradual release model is a classic scaffold. I do it. Teacher models, we do it together. You do it together. Peer collaboration, you do it alone. Independent practice. You slowly reduce the support.
Guiding the process, not giving the product. That's a useful distinction. What about after they've tried something feedback?
Huge mistake potential here.
Yeah.
Rushing or totally neglecting the error correction stage. This is often where the real learning clicks in.
Where they figure out what went wrong and why.
Precisely. They need timely, specific feedback to know if they're on track. And this isn't just written work. It's spoken errors in language class, technique and a practical skill, anything. You need to plan time for correction and feedback.
So feedback is a planned teaching activity, not an afterthought.
Yes. Another mistake, especially maybe in science or hands-on subjects. Withholding tools or relying only on the textbook.
Like thinking reading about experiments is enough?
Exactly. The sources stress that kids especially need to explore. They're naturally curious. Give them the materials, beakers, magnets, whatever. Let them mess around, investigate. Connect it to things they know, like comparing a science filter to a kitchen strainer. Make it concrete.
Tap into that natural curiosity.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the teacher's role outside their own classroom?
Yeah, remaining isolated is seen as a mistake. Not about school politics, but just being a hermit in your room.
Why is that a problem?
Simple things help. Go to social events sometimes, eat in the staff room, say hi to colleagues, help out. You build a network. You'll need support or advice someday. And it's easier to get if you're connected.
Build your professional community. Makes sense. What about the teacher's own well-being?
Absolutely crucial. 2 big related mistakes. Working yourself into burnout and being way too hard on yourself.
Teaching has high burnout rates, doesn't it?
It does. The advice is work smart, be effective, but then go home. Have a life outside school. Recharge.
Easier said than done sometimes.
For sure. And related to that is self-compassion. Tough days will happen. Lessons will flop sometimes. You'll make mistakes. Everyone does. The goal is growth, improvement, not perfection. Don't beat yourself up over every little slip.
Growth, not perfection. That's a healthy mindset. What about handling criticism, maybe from students, about grades or methods?
Getting defensive is the mistake here. One source shared a story about a tough first student conference over a grade. The lesson wasn't just about that one grade, but about needing clearer instructions, better rubrics, maybe asking for feedback on assignments before they're due.
Using that feedback to improve the system.
Exactly. Avoid defensiveness, avoid sarcasm. Explain your reasoning calmly. Show them the criteria. See it as data to improve your teaching.
Okay. Any other quick mistakes mentioned?
Yeah, a few others briefly noted. Just basic lack of subject knowledge or teaching skills, pedagogy, not connecting the material to students' actual lives, and using bad examples that just confuse things.
Wow, that's quite a list. But framing them as areas for awareness and growth makes it feel constructive, not critical.
That's the idea. Knowing where the common bumps are helps you navigate the road more smoothly.
Okay, so that covers a lot of ground on what not to do, based on the sources. Let's flip it. What about the effective methods? What does good teaching look like according to these materials?
Great transition. And the first big point the sources make is that there's no single silver bullet, no one best method. Effective teaching is more like being a chef with a well-stocked kitchen. You blend different ingredients, different approaches, depending on the dish, the subject, the students, the learning goal.
So flexibility and having a range of tools is key.
Absolutely. And there's a fundamental shift discussed, a move away from purely teacher-centered instruction.
The sage on the stage we mentioned.
Right. Towards more student-centered learning, the teacher becomes more of a guide on the side, a facilitator. Students become active participants, not just passive listeners.
Yep. Assessment changes too.
Yeah, it broadens out not just tests, but projects, participation, portfolios, things that show understanding in different ways. It's about empowering students to take ownership.
Okay, so what are some specific methods highlighted in the sources? Does lecturing still have a place?
It does, actually, especially for large groups or introducing unique material. But as we said, it has to be engaging now. Shorter bursts, lots of visuals, questions, interaction, not just a drone.
Got it. Use it strategically.
Demonstrating is another core one. Showing, not just telling. Think science experiments, art techniques, solving a math problem step by step on the board while explaining your thinking.
Making it visible.
Exactly. Group learning or collaborative work gets a lot of positive attention in the sources. Students working together, teaching each other.
What are the big benefits there?
Builds confidence, boosts motivation, often leads to deeper understanding because explaining something helps you learn it and develops those crucial teamwork and communication skills. But the sources caution you need clear rules and roles, and the teacher needs to monitor it to keep it productive.
Structure is important for group work.
Very. Technology-based learning, e-learning is obviously huge now. Online courses, software, simulations, videos.
The flexibility seems like a big plus.
Huge. Convenience, accessing materials anytime. Plus potential for personalized learning, students moving at their own pace.
Role-playing came up too, right? Seems versatile.
Incredibly versatile. It's not just kids acting out skits, it's for practicing real-world skills, exploring different viewpoints, problem solving. Think simulating a job interview, debating a historical event from different perspectives, working through an ethical dilemma.
So it makes learning active and applied.
Very much so. The sources list tons of benefits. Integrating knowledge, applying it to problems, developing empathy, making abstract ideas concrete, getting immediate feedback within the scenario. But it needs good planning and a reflection time afterwards.
That reflection part sounds key to cementing the learning.
Definitely. Problem-based learning, or PBL, is another powerful student-centered approach. You give students a complex, real-world problem to solve, usually in groups.
Like figuring out how to improve recycling in the community.
Exactly. It drives critical thinking and problem solving. Inquiry-based learning is similar, but maybe more student-led. They ask the questions, they investigate, they explore, with the teacher as a guide. Fosters curiosity and research skills.
The flipped classroom model also seems popular.
Yeah, that's where students get the basic content, maybe videos or readings before class. Then class time is used for the active stuff, applying concepts, working on problems, discussion.
Maximizing that valuable face-to-face time.
Precisely. Kinesthetic learning involves movement, physical activity. Great for engagement and retention for some topics and learners.
Learning by doing, literally.
Right. Self-directed learning empowers students to set goals, plan, and reflect on their own learning. Teachers provide tools and guidance for that. Experiential learning focuses on the process learning through application, observation, reflection, think labs, journals, debates.
Lots of overlap between these methods.
There is. Case-based learning is using realistic scenarios or cases for students to analyze and apply their knowledge. Using games like Jeopardy templates or educational board games is mentioned as a fun way to engage and reinforce learning.
Gamification.
Yep. Experimental pedagogy is mentioned too, basically. Teachers using research methods to test and improve their own teaching. Trauma-informed teaching is vital, creating a safe, supportive space, understanding how trauma impacts learning.
That sounds incredibly important.
It is. Using reflection, consistently getting students to think about their learning. Using share-outs, letting students explain their thinking or processes to peers. Using learning progressions, visual maps of the learning journey to help students see progress and set goals.
Helping them see the path.
Exactly. Authentic assessment design, creating tasks that mirror real life, like budgeting or designing something, not just paper and pencil tests. Homework that matters, purposeful tasks connecting school to life, not just busy work. Tiered assignments, same core content, but different levels of complexity to meet students where they are.
Differentiation in action.
Yes. And finally, that three-dimensional framework, tailoring the content, the learning process, and the final product to individual student needs and strengths.
Wow. That's an incredible toolbox.
Hmm.
It really drives home that effective teaching is about skillful selection and blending.
It really is. Which leads perfectly to the next question. How do you choose the right tool for the job? How do you make sure the method actually targets the kind of learning you want?
Right. This is where Bloom's taxonomy comes in, isn't it? Connecting these methods to different levels of thinking.
Exactly. Bloom's gives us a language and a structure to think about educational goals. It helps us move beyond just learning about something to specifying what kind of thinking we want students to do. Analyze, evaluate, create.
So it clarifies the target.
Precisely. The most famous part is the cognitive domain thinking skills. The sources mention both the original and revised versions, but the core idea is a hierarchy, from lower order skills like remembering facts and understanding concepts.
Like recalling dates or explaining a definition.
Right. Up to higher order skills like applying knowledge in new situations, analyzing information by breaking it down, evaluating by making judgments, and creating something new.
And different teaching methods naturally lend themselves to different levels.
Absolutely. For those lower levels, remembering, understanding methods like clear explanations, lectures used well, basic Q&A, flashcards, summarizing activities often work well, asking students to list steps or define terms.
Okay, foundational stuff. How do you push them higher?
To get to applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating, you need methods that demand more complex thought. This is where things like problem-based learning, inquiry, case studies, debates, designing projects, authentic assessments really shine.
So if you want students to evaluate different historical interpretations, a simple lecture won't cut it.
Probably not on its own. You'd need an activity where they actively compare, critique, and justify their judgments, like a structured debate or analyzing primary source documents with conflicting views. You match the verb in your objective, analyze, evaluate, create with an activity that requires that level of thinking.
Aligning the objective, the activity, and the assessment.
That's the goal. Bloom's also has the psychomotor domain physical skills.
Like sports, music, lab techniques.
Exactly. Methods here involve physical practice, demonstrations, kinesthetic activities, simulations requiring physical manipulation, even strategic games involving movement and coordination.
Okay, that seems fairly straightforward. What about the affective domain? Feelings, attitudes, values. That seems trickier to teach.
It is less about direct instruction, more about fostering an environment and providing experiences. The levels go from just receiving information or being aware, to responding actively, to valuing something, showing interest, respecting opinions, to organizing different values, and finally to characterizing acting consistently based on a value system.
So how do methods connect here?
Think about activities that involve discussing values or ethical dilemmas, role-playing scenarios that require empathy, creating that safe, trauma-informed classroom where students feel respected, receiving, responding. Using reflection prompts that ask about attitudes or appreciation for a topic, valuing. It's often woven into how you run the classroom and the kinds of discussions you facilitate.
So it's integrated, not always a separate lesson.
Often, yes. Now, the sources are also quick to point out Bloom's isn't perfect, it gets criticized.
Oh. What are the criticisms?
Well, thinking isn't always neat and linear like the pyramid suggests. You might be analyzing while remembering facts and trying to create a solution all at once.
Real thinking is messier.
Exactly. And just because someone understands something doesn't mean they can automatically apply it in a new context that transfer needs specific practice. Some also worry the focus on higher levels might devalue foundational knowledge, which you still need.
Can't analyze if you don't know the basics.
Right. But despite the critiques, the sources agree it's still a really useful tool for teachers. It helps you be intentional. To think, what cognitive level am I aiming for? Does my activity actually get students there? Does my assessment measure it? A study mentioned showed aligning English teaching with Bloom's actually boosted critical thinking.
So a valuable guide, even if not a rigid rule book.
That's a good way to put it. Align the what, the how, and the check across all the domains. Cognitive, psychomotor, affective as appropriate.
Okay, so we've looked at mistakes to avoid, a whole toolbox of effective methods, and how to use Bloom's to align those methods with learning goals. Let's bring it all together.
Synthesizing it all.
What's the big takeaway message for you, the listener, whether you're new to teaching at a school, college, university, or you've been doing it for years?
I think the main message is that improvement is always possible. Effective classrooms aren't magic. They're built by teachers who understand learning, who reflect on what they do, and who make deliberate choices.
That reflection piece seems crucial.
It's everything. Teaching is a craft you hone over time. Regularly asking yourself what worked, what didn't, why is key. learning from the mistakes, seeking support from colleagues or mentors. That's how you grow. Aim for growth, like we said, not perfection.
And this continuous improvement connects to a bigger purpose, right?
Yeah.
Especially thinking about the PIQC context in Pakistan.
Absolutely. The goal is bigger than just getting through the curriculum. It's about helping shape a capable, thoughtful next generation. Effective teachers challenge students intellectually, yes, but also help them develop practical skills, critical thinking, problem-solving abilities, empathy, responsibility. It's about believing they can meet free standards and giving them the tools and support to do it, showing them why it matters.
The teacher's impact goes way beyond test scores.
Way beyond. Students remember how you made them feel. Did you care? Did you know their name? Teaching is deeply human work. You pour your heart into it.
And that can be draining, especially on hard days.
It really can. But the sources remind us, even when things feel off, even when a lesson bombs, you are likely making a difference, maybe in ways you'll never even see. Every day is a fresh start, another chance to connect and spark something.
That's a powerful thought to hold on to. It makes the effort of continuous improvement feel incredibly worthwhile.
It frames it not as a chore, but as the way we amplify our positive impact.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe the final thought is this. Continuously growing as a teacher isn't just about learning new tricks. It's about deepening your ability to genuinely connect with students, unlock their potential, and make that lasting, positive difference. It's about shaping the future, really. One student, one lesson, one aha moment at a time.
Well said. A vital and truly rewarding mission.
Thank you again for sharing the sources that fueled this discussion. We really hope these insights on mistakes, methods, and matching them to learning goals using frameworks like Bloom's are helpful for your teaching practice.
And we hope this conversation contributes positively to the ongoing efforts, like those by PIQC, to enhance educational quality in Pakistan and everywhere students are learning.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We wish you the very best in the incredibly important work that you do.